In our APUSH classrooms, in my opinion, one of the biggest missed opportunities is to help students understand injustice without ever helping them feel it. At this point in the year, many of you are dealing with Reconstruction and on into the Jim Crow era of the South. And so in this video, I want to give you an activity that I think will help students connect with the experience of injustice, not just the fact of it. And my goal here is to help teachers awaken in their students a lifelong love of history. So, if that's what you want to do, you're in the right place. Now, of course, there is an immediate caveat. My students have always been by far majority white, and so that's where the angst comes in for me. They cannot just hear about and read about black voter suppression in the Jim Crow South. They have to feel it. And if that's not your context, then it's very possible that no teacher needs to teach their students to feel injustice. But even in that context, I think this is a helpful exercise to connect past injustice to present injustice. Okay, so what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about literacy tests as a voter suppression tactic in the postbellum South. And if you're a fastidious teacher and you're covering what you need to cover, then you will surely tell your students about this tactic to maintain the antebellum power structure in the South, and you may even have them read about it. And in that case, it's just another factoid that they have to stuff away in their brain folds to reproduce on a test. But my goal in teaching this part of Reconstruction has always been to help my students feel the injustice from the inside. So here's how I do it. Maybe it's not the best way, but this is how I do it. Now here's what I know about my students. The most important thing to many of them is their grade in my class. So if I'm really going to engage them, I've got to mess with the thing that's most valuable to them. So if I'm convinced of the following axiom, if they feel it, they won't forget it, and I am, then I've got to do what I can to attach that feeling to a graded exercise. So here's what I do. Once everyone comes in and sits at their seats, I tell them that we are going to have a pop quiz. And here's the thing, I never give pop quizzes. And so immediately some of them are chewing their fingernails while others are verbally protesting. But I steel my heart against their protestations and I hand out the quiz without further explanation, except to say it's a general quiz about what you've learned so far in APUSH. What I give them is a literacy test that was representative of these kinds of tests from the 1890s through about the 1960s. It's not labeled that way. I haven't even told them what today's class is going to be about. I just tell them we have a packed day and we only have 5 minutes to complete it. And at this point, make no mistake, I am their enemy. They are deeply displeased that they ever signed up for a class with such an unfair bald man. You could feel the tension in the air, and then to further add to that tension, I tell them that any student who has been in my class before, and since I also taught AP World, I had a decent amount of repeat students, they don't have to take the quiz. And that's when they erupt. What? That's not fair! But sorry, that's the way it is. And so they begrudgingly do their duty and they pick up their pencils and they begin. And once they do, that's when heads start coming up and looking around, and then hands go up. Mr. Heimler, we haven't learned this. To which I say, just do your best. And let me just give you a sample of the kinds of questions that they're seeing. And these come from a literacy test taken from Alabama in 1965, and the link for that is in the description below if you want to check it out. In which document or writing is the Bill of Rights found? Of which branch of government is the Supreme Court justice part? Executive, legislative, or judicial? The vice president presides over blank. Now, I put these questions first because many of the students are probably going to know these kinds of answers, but then the quiz goes on. If a state is party to a case, the Constitution provides that original jurisdiction shall be in blank. The Constitution limits the size of the District of Columbia to blank. If election of the president becomes the duty of the United States House of Representatives and it fails to act, who becomes the president and when? I'm not gonna lie to you, they do not like me during this process. But that's fine because, the payoff is worth it. Now, once the 5 minutes are over, I take up the quizzes, I put them on my desk, and I don't mention anything about them. I want to keep them in that feeling. So I start talking about voter suppression and the means by which that happened in the Jim Crow South. And that's when I tell them about literacy tests. And I tell them that it was a literacy test taken from Alabama that they actually completed at the beginning of class. And at that point, I tell them, I'm not going to grade your quizzes. The grade wasn't the point. And at that point, we can have a productive discussion because everybody chills out a little bit. And I try to connect that feeling to the disenfranchisement of black voters during this period. I asked them how they felt about the students who got to skip the quiz because they were in my previous class last year. They tell me how unfair it was. So I tell them about grandfather clauses and other methods of disenfranchisement. And the rest of the class is just a little lecture and a lot of discussion, but I tell you what, they remember that day. I should probably mention that by the end of that class, they like me again. They say, Heimler, I see what you did there, and it was good. So, no permanent damage done, because as I never tire of saying, if they feel it, they won't forget it. Now, right over here are more videos about class activities if you're interested, and they include activities like this as well as activities to help your students learn the writing portions of this course. So, I'll see you in the next one. Heimler out.